for the buyers. We talked a lot about the implementers of digital transformation, the OEMs, why they're going to be benefiting, what they're doing well, what they're doing wrong. Can you talk a little bit about the supply side of digital transformation? So I'm thinking about the platforms, the hyperscalers, the people that are providing services. What are they doing well? What are they doing not so well in terms of making the digital transformation experience really be the best possible experience for these OEMs and these manufacturers?
Yeah, I think it's time to stop with the BS and the hype. And I think I'm going to do another live stream next week with the folks at Clarify. We can post details later on how to get access to that. But it's the title is Calling BS on Industrial IoT. This all kicked off around 2016, right? If we go back to the history, once the big platform players, I'm not going to name any of them in case I get in trouble, but all the different three-letter acronyms and two-letter acronyms that own industrial IoT platforms, they all came from an older world, right? They were either an ERP provider or they were an industrial automation provider or similar. And they just rebranded everything under the heading of industrial IoT, which honestly is a smart thing to do, right? If you got to sell your widget, you better be named the right trendy thing. But it's just put so much hype and confusion in the market. And I'm glad to see, or you went through kind of the realities of Watson this morning. There needs to be more thought leadership like that, where we're talking about, look, industrial IoT, I think, is a misused term. I think we've actually misdefined it. And again, I'm going to do a whole live stream on this next week where we talk about the internet part of industrial IoT is actually missing, right? There's no internet yet, I would argue. If you use an internet to connect to the cloud, it doesn't count. But think about the internet in terms of openness to sharing of data. So I think on the supply side, we've got to stop with the hype. We've got to stop talking terminology and buzzwords, right? I just watched a video this morning about Industry 5.0, and I'm worn out from Industry 4.0. What I tell people is only engineers would try and define a revolution before it's happened, right? You don't get to do that, engineers, right? We don't know what Industry 4.0 is going to mean. That's the fourth industrial revolution. Right. We're going to go back in history in 10 years' time, and hopefully then we can define it. But all those buzzwords, Industry 4.0, Industry 5.0, Industrial IoT, hyperscale, you name it. I don't care, my customers don't care. What my customers care about, and this is going out to all the vendors that are trying to supply to those OEMs, those heavy industrials that I work with, they care about outcomes again. What does it actually do? And then if it's leveraging newer technology, how is it doing it differently? So much of what I see out there, we've done 20 years ago. Back at the start of my career, we were doing some of this stuff. Right, connecting to the internet is not new. Getting data off machines in lean, mean, interesting ways is not new. So if you're going to come with an offering, you've got to first of all lead with outcomes. What's the actual value? And then you got to tell me and tell my customers, how is this different? How am I obtaining that value in net new ways? And how does that align with the big transformation with a capital T that we're seeing happening in the market? Because there is an absolute risk, right? If you are a buyer of this technology and you place the wrong bet, and you're putting the strategy of your business firmly on this bet, you can get it wrong. You can get it horribly wrong, and it can cost you a fortune. And you can lose. You can lose out on what's the potential we're talking about. So I think the ask, and where I'm seeing companies do it well, and I'm seeing startups do this really well now, is they're parking all the tech. You probably can't see it on the live stream, but that poster behind me says it's not about technology, right? That's digital transformation, not about technology. This is what these vendors are realizing. If you've really got the best technology, if you've really got the coolest stuff, if it's really industrial IoT ready and Industry 4.0 approved and Industry 5.0 ready, fine. But what's the outcome? How is that different, and what's the value it's driving?
Are there Startups or larger companies that are doing that particularly well, in your opinion, that you maybe want to point to as an example of how to do this well? To your point, lead with outcomes, and then talk about how your technology is going to get those outcomes differently. Are there any companies that come to mind when you say, like, yeah, they're doing it really, really well in terms of their positioning and their marketing?
Yeah, and I'll talk about. I'm not going to make a recommendation on go buy someone's technology. That's not the question you're asking, right? You're just saying from a positioning perspective, who does a good job with outcomes and helping companies kind of navigate this.
Right, totally.
So I think one of the best in class at that is PTC. Right, PTC figured out early on in this journey that if you own the PLM, right, the product lifecycle management suite of software, and we're all getting excited about digital twins and digital threads, if you already own the 3D image, the 3D mock-up, the 3D entity of a product in the PLM, and you've got some CAD CAM software, you can plug all of the other elements of a digital thread strategy, industrial IoT from something like a ThingWorks perspective. There's a Vuforia, I forget what their AR platform is, but you can plug all this stuff on top of that, and it just looks great. And what that's enabled them to do is tell one of the most compelling stories about how all the technology feeds into a full-scale digital transformation. And backing that up, they do an excellent job with companies like L&S Research to put out papers on the outcomes this can deliver. So they are my, again, I'm not making a technology recommendation here. I'm making a pure thought leadership recommendation. Go follow them, get on their website, download every white paper they write. They do a great job of getting into things like HBR with their CEO and writing extensively about the future of digital transformation, industrial IoT, etc. So I think they do a great job, and then we can talk offline about how good or not their tech is.
I think that's right, Luke. As I survey my customers, PTC is up there as probably one of the more popular IIoT platform options. And it's funny because you're mentioning that they started with diagrams and CAD, and I didn't know that about their history. I just know them as an IoT platform for data because I think that's what they've transformed into. But I think you raised a good point. They started with the design and the PLC, the PLM, and now they've added components to that to support that and have grown into this new space, which is really interesting.
Oh, and I love it. I see it now. I was on a forum this morning, and people were talking about digital threads, digital twins, and I want to make a digital twin of something. And the mock-up they showed was a 3D CAD model of an asset. It's like, I can't even think of how long I've been out of college, but it's probably about 20 years. Like, we were drawing those 3D images in college 20 years ago. We didn't call it a digital twin. But right. PTC were smart enough to know if anything's going to be a digital twin, if anything's going to win that definition over, it's going to be a nice, sexy looking 3D rendering of an asset. And if you can do that, and if you own the PLM, if you own that product, that 3D rendering of that product from a platform perspective, then if you're going to showcase industrial IoT technology, AR technology, there is nothing better than that sexy 3D rendering of that particular product to do it with. And that's where they tell such a compelling story. And they back it up with good thought leadership. And again, I'm not going to make a tech recommendation because I try and stay away from making hard and fast tech recommendations or not. But yeah, they nail it from a thought leadership perspective.
That's a great example. I really appreciate that. So again, just to recap, if you're selling AI or IoT digital transformation, stay focused on the outcomes, think about how your technology is doing something differently, and really get out there with thought leadership that resonates with those 2 points to win the market dominance. So I think that's a really good framework.